we'll just try to be super brief, I guess. Apologies everyone again for the delay. I am Pietro Autorino. I am a researcher at Scuola Normale Superiore in Florence in the sociology department. This is part of my ongoing work in progress research. And I've come across Giorgia throughout my field research, and we started connecting, and I am sort of part-time in my research allocated time collaborating with her. So this is the title of our presentation today. Giorgia, do you want to shortly introduce yourself before I go on to first slide?
I think later.
Okay.
Because they will understand.
We'll carry on. Yes.
I don't want to.
So second slide, I'm shortly explaining the title, where it comes from. The idea of facilitating agroecology, I take it from Lopez Santendero, whom I came across with throughout recently in a workshop with the Common Ecologies project. I'm not sure any one of you familiar with that. It's led by Manuela Zechner and Bue Hansen as part of their postdoc at University of I forgot the name of the university, but it doesn't matter. Anyways, I came across this text which they helped translating into English. And it brings up the idea of facilitation into local agroecological processes, putting a strong emphasis on the social and cultural. I think today intersecting this with technoscience, with the sort of technoscience scientific processes we're referring to, I hope to make clear how this bridges into also nature, cultural, and more than human worlds. So, but facilitation is a concept that is and a practice that is very strongly present in my field and in my work at this point in time. And we decided to bring it to a central level of attention today. The idea of technoscience from below has already emerged in STS, but what I try to express with this picture is why we call it grassroots technoscience. The idea of, in super short, we start from this, okay? Like cutting grass and composting, okay? It's regenerative because this is the vision of the whole thing, like bring up agroecological transition through positive, constructive actions that can make a sort of justice into ecologies we inhabit and co-produce. But technoscience in super short just means looking at scientific practices, okay, that are not just a cultural product or a hegemonic institution, but looking at how these are situated in certain contexts, practices, relations, helps us understanding how we can make value about that more. So I frame all of this personally in a sort of collective action that is agroecological transition, ranging from social movements to farmers to everyday life, okay? So, but if we start looking at the work of Radici Connesse, the project that Giorgia started and that I've joined, from the practice of what it is that it can do and that it does and that it is, we start from defining the compost. The compost is, in our view, not humus, not sort of mature stage compost that is already like sort of soil-like, but something previous in an earlier stage of compostation that is a microbial community, very, very lively in its existence, okay? And then the other question is, what can a compost do? So I pass it on to Giorgia, and please, Carlotta, go on to next slide.
Yeah, so me and Pietro, we connected together, starting from the concept of a community, and I was working with the soil microbial community, and I studied an approach that born in America, in Oregon, thanks to Professor Dr. Ellen Ingham, and it is called the soil food web. And with the soil food web, this means that there is a community of beneficial microorganisms that is in the soil, and thanks to them, the plants and the soil itself are capable to live. So they are so connected with yields, productivity, and climate change, and they are so small and not visible with the human eyes. And because of this, other approach, like the Green Revolution that we have just passed, they don't take into consideration these small microorganisms. But now, thanks to science and research and so on, we discovered that this community is built with a specific relationship. And the point is, the soil doesn't need just about fungi or just about bacteria. And nowadays we can have a look to our society, and like fungi trends and bacteria trends, like certain approach became just a commercial trend, but is the whole community that is so important. So prey and predator and prey can really make available the nutrients for the plants. So this means that fungi, bacteria, but other higher trophic level microorganisms like nematodes or microarthropods can eat bacteria, and their poo is full of nutrients that became available for the plants. But fungi and bacteria are not alone. So this is the starting point of community, and the vision of looking through this relationship in order to also think about society and how to regenerate certain society model that we had until now.
Should we go on to next slide?
Yeah.
Okay, so please Carlotta, go on. The participatory laboratory is what Radici Connesse's project is sort of carrying on. That is, goes from developing, growing, crafting compost to analyzing to then producing sort of products to apply, that from inocules to compost tea to compost extract onto the field for plants and soil. But why is this a participatory laboratory? In Radici Connesse experience, it certainly blends certain aspects of the more like commercial laboratory, just doing analysis and commercial offers to farmers, and the more academic research laboratory, which is, however, too often, you know, sort of locked into certain dynamics of institutional, bureaucratized, or also ivory tower academe kind of questions answering. The question, though, is where is this laboratory? This laboratory is mobile. It reaches out from the fields to the kitchen, to the forests, to the, you know, different parts of the farms and the social sort of community ecologies nearby. So it has a camera, and this is what makes it participatory in the first place, because the image, the qualitative data that comes from the analysis needs to be shared and observed not only but from the expert researcher, but from the whole community of actors. And this triggers like this sort of enables a process of restitution that is central to creating a good feedback cycle between the farmer, the scientist, the activist, the commoner, whoever's there. And sort of, you know, because you say, a farmer would say, oh, a good consultancy is a consultancy that makes me autonomous, right, from the consultant itself. And in a way, this relationship between the researcher and the farmer is completely turned upside, completely transformed, because the farmer and the peasant and the scientist here are together in the laboratory. Okay, so it has a different idea of autonomy that is, you know, more centered on interdependence, thick, denser relations, rather than, I don't know, the independence of a self-sustained, self-made individual. And another practice of the laboratory is, of course, the soil archive, but I'll leave it on to Giorgia because we will soon run short on time. If we can head onto next slide. I'm not even sure we will have much time for this.
We can.
But let's go on. So this would be you, Giorgia. You want to introduce the participatory laboratory in Ceccarelli's work?
Yeah, this is an example of participatory research. I don't know if you are familiar with, but Salvatore Ceccarelli is a professor that introduced to farmer an approach of cultivate cereal, legumes, and other kind of grains. In which way making agreement with the farmer to breed population of cereals. So this means different kind of variety of the same also species that evolve in the soil, and so by reseeds and by reproducing this variety, these seeds, also all the all the field will be full of biodiversity in this kind of species. So this means that the cereal will evolve with the soil, and is a kind, in this case, there is a restitution by farmer to scientists because they are the grower of this variety, but the researchers are with them because the real research is on the field. So this means participatory. So the research cannot be inside the lab of just inside the lab of the university, but has to be a connection also with the habits, with the memories, with the habits, yeah, of the farmer.
And the idea is like about mixing, right? So this was also the idea that by mescolate contadini mescolate was sort of the encouragement by Ceccarelli, and some say, okay, well, this was not actually an innovation, something has been done, but what our other informants say is, like, this was revolutionary in the approach, not so much in the genetic innovation. But if we can carry on to next slide, our idea is to doing something similar with microorganisms, okay? Through inocules of one compost into another, we sort of develop something that leads from mixing into something like a popolazione evolutiva, which we're not sure how to call it yet, to be honest. This is like the experimental phase we're in. And we are co-designing this research together with all these collectives, right? The farmers, the Radici Connesse project, our needs, necessities, availabilities, but also the timings and diversity and thickness of this community here. Like, these are just San Coprinos mushroom on top of one compost that we made this winter. Can we carry on, please, to next slide? I don't want to run out of time, last minute. This slide was to show something that's been happening recently, okay? Like, we're working not just with alternative communities of practice, but also with like Green Revolution affected farmers, okay? This is a group of farmers in the Bassa Veronese, like 200 kilometers north of Bologna, in like a devastated territory, which is like completely like on the edge of collapse for its agrarian production. All the kiwi trees are dying, a lot of other plants are sick, and we're trying to spot the nematodes here, the root feeder nematodes, together with Giorgia, with the laboratory.
Is a pathogen.
But the question here is more, okay, was this, okay, first of all, that the soil food web was also thought for regenerating monocultures in the ruins of Green Revolution in the first place, but so it wants to reach out to also like extensive productions. But also here, what I wanted to show is ask who is experimenting, and it's not just like-minded, progressive, liberal, libertarian, whatever communities, radical communities, but it's also people who are experiencing this obligation in other contexts, the urgency to sort of try out something different. And I wanted to show in the picture on the right that these farmers already have been doing a lot of work in this direction. Like, these are all blue barrels full of effective microorganisms and BD preparations, like stuff that, you know, is not just like one would think, oh, this is like just the alternative peasant politicized movement. No, this is like happening. And like here we were like doing the participatory laboratory together with them. But I think we have to move on. This next slide is on the transformation that we're sort of like imagining in the more broader technoscientific environment, where agrarianists are only mostly trained in soil chemistry and not in soil microbiology. It's like when we say, oh, a doctor doesn't train in nutrition, right? So you think you're gonna heal a disease by certain means, and you do, and you will, but you lose so many other things on the way. This is like, just in short, like to imagine and ask, you know, how is this democratic intervention into the realm of science and technology going to formalize and develop, and how can we craft it and carry it out? This is like still like super long way to go from us, but thinking this outside the question of scale would be for us sort of an indication, like drawing from and not seeing. Anyways, the next slide we're for sure skipping, the compost cybernetics. It's just a work in progress idea of like rethinking the ecology in a compost. I'm not sure, like, I think we have just another few minutes to like sort of bring this to the nutshell. The next slide, facilitating participatory research. Giorgia, you want to say something about this? They've been talking loads.
I will start with the approach and
yes, please do. Go ahead. Me? Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, no. So the idea, like, this is where we're at. Okay, we're trying to facilitate an experimental approach with other peasants, other actors in the field and in post. And like, these are some, you know, some of the challenges or like sort of like aspects we could highlight so far. That is for sure, you know, that there are different elements in terms of knowledge here. No, there are experts, there are militant activists, there are researchers from, you know, social science background, and there's also then, you know, lay local knowledge of sort of people who are inhabiting the territory daily and observing their fields and what's going on, and are able to detect other kind of information than that you will from a microscope or from observing a compost. So there are different combinations of this in the facilitations we sort of participate to, and this is definitely like you know, an interesting aspect to observe for us definitely. I can say something about. Do you want to say something about what, Giorgia?
Yeah,
which
just
you comment on?
Yeah, just the fact that facilitating for us is facilitating behind two words. I mean the microorganism behind the soil and the community of farmers that are above the soil, and in the middle there is the ongoing state of compost that cannot be defined in one identity or one species, but is an ongoing mass that is transforming and is variable. So people that are, for example, used to use prepared fertilizer are used to constant to control, but this approach has also to take into consideration this relationship, and so sometimes things with another point of view that is not anthropocentric anymore, but take into consideration the multi-species justice. So this means the transformation that are related with the microorganism and that can constitute this inocule that is compost.
Thank you so much, Giorgia. Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to standardize, you know, such a practice. And like people who try are sort of suffering a lot. Like, you know, it's not easy. So we're really sort of interrogating this. And did you say something about the informal? Do we still have time, Carlotta? Maybe yes. Okay, 2 minutes.
Hi. You've got about 2 minutes. Yeah.
Thanks. Cheers.
Yeah. You can see.
Well, it's interesting about the idea of formalizing and having to stay informal, because, you know, for instance, like in the technoscientific infrastructure that we sort of participate to at large, so the mainstream, say, Microbiology in soils is not taken into account, okay? There's no categories for that. Compost is just an inocule because it cannot be a fertilizer, it cannot be a pesticide sold as, you know what I mean? So how to formalize it is like a question of like the you know, the sort of kind of recognition you can get, but also the fact that research with these products, with these variables, are not existent and are not allowed legally. So for instance, on the field of farmers, we cannot do this, carry on this research formally. And we start mobilizing and engaging socially and politically in a network of farmers that is vindicating this clandestinity. We're part of Genuino Clandestino network in Italy. It's a widespread political network of farmers and peasants and local communities that revindicate the clandestinity as a genuine act, because it's necessary to maintain the sort of practices that are otherwise illegal, okay? And so, you know, I mean, this is not necessarily a parallel that you can transfer equally, like the same thing, but, you know, we are also inhabiting this like troubled space of informality and formality, and that's a part of our struggle, for instance, now. And well, I mean, yeah, I mean, then the other thing that we kind of had throughout but couldn't really like comment well upon is like that the expectations of farmers who are experiencing severe multiple crises or who are putting their livelihood at stake is also not something that like we really have to pay a lot of attention to, and like even but that's like, you know, like work relationships also with your neighbor at desk at work or like with your colleague or comrades in a collective. So like we were turning a compost earlier on with a fork, and we were like, okay, now we're going, one of us will hit each other with the fork, and like the project will be finished here. Like present on later and say, no, look, like we hit each other with a fork turning the compost, it didn't work. Like, no, anyways, that's a joke. I apologize for the delay with the start of presentation and the technical problem. I'm sorry about that. I'll hope you can correct that. And I'll definitely stick around to hear the other participants, what they've got to say. These are just some references, yeah, to some of the things we've been mentioning